My husband died suddenly 3 months ago, and I found out he had a secret family with 2 children in a town just 30 minutes away that no one knew about, not even his parents. Now his other wife is demanding half of our assets and custody of our 4-year-old daughter because she believes both children deserve to know their siblings, and my in-laws are taking her side. 3 months ago, I thought I had a perfect life. Adam and I had been married for 6 wonderful years. We owned a beautiful colonial-style home in a quiet suburb, had stable careers that we both enjoyed, and our 4-year-old daughter, Emily, was healthy, happy, and the light of our lives. Adam worked as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company, which meant he traveled a few days each month, but he always made up for his absences with dedicated family time when he was home. We had a strong support system, with my parents living just an hour away and his parents in the next town over. Our marriage wasn't without its challenges, what relationship is. But we communicated well and always worked through any issues together. Or at least that's what I believed. Everything changed on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was at work, teaching my 4th grade class, when the school principal appeared at my classroom door with a grim expression. There had been an accident. Adam had been driving on the highway when a truck lost control and crossed the median. The collision was catastrophic, killing him instantly. I remember collapsing into the chair behind my desk, unable to process what I was hearing. My students were quickly ushered to another classroom while the school counselor sat with me until my mother arrived to take me home. The days that followed were a blur of grief, funeral arrangements, and trying to explain to Emily that her daddy wasn't coming home. Adam's parents, Robert and Susan, were devastated, having lost their only child. They stayed with us for 2 weeks after the funeral, helping with Emily and supporting me through the initial shock and paperwork that follows a sudden death. When they finally returned to their own home, I was faced with the overwhelming task of rebuilding a life for my daughter and myself without Adam. I took a month off from teaching, using a combination of bereavement leave and sick days. During this time, I began the process of sorting through Adam's belongings and handling his affairs. His company had been incredibly supportive, promptly processing his life insurance and offering assistance with benefit claims. I also needed to address his personal accounts, which meant accessing his email and financial records. Adam had always managed our finances. We had a joint checking account for household expenses, but he handled the investments, retirement accounts, and savings. I knew the passwords to most of our accounts, but there were a few I didn't have access to. After several attempts to guess his personal email password, I reached out to his best friend, Marcus, who had been his college roommate and the best man at our wedding. Marcus suggested trying the name of Adam's childhood dog combined with the year he graduated college, a combination Adam had apparently used for years. It worked. As I scrolled through Adam's inbox, I was initially just looking for financial statements or account information. Instead, I found dozens of emails from someone named Vanessa Mitchell. The subject lines were simple and domestic: soccer schedule for next month, Jake's parent-teacher conference, house repair estimate, and most alarmingly, our anniversary plans. With growing dread, I opened one email after another, each revelation more devastating than the last. Vanessa wasn't just some woman Adam knew. Based on the emails, they shared a house, finances, and 2 children, a girl named Ava who was 11 and a boy named Jake who was 8. They celebrated anniversaries. They had a life together. There were references to when you're back from your work trip that corresponded exactly with the times Adam was supposedly home with me and Emily. The most recent email had been sent just 3 days before Adam's death, discussing plans for Jake's upcoming birthday. I remember sitting at our kitchen table, staring at the screen until my eyes burned, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. How was this possible? Adam and I had been together for 8 years, married for 6. These emails suggested a relationship spanning at least 11 years, overlapping entirely with our time together. How could he have maintained 2 completely separate lives without either of us knowing? With shaking hands, I searched for Vanessa Mitchell on social media. I found her immediately, a pretty woman with dark hair and a warm smile. Her profile was filled with photos of her children, both with features unmistakably similar to Adam's. There were even a few pictures of Adam himself, playing with the kids in a backyard I didn't recognize or sitting at a dinner table that wasn't ours, celebrating holidays with people I'd never met. According to her profile, Vanessa lived in Riverside, a town just 30 minutes from our home. I felt physically ill, rushing to the bathroom just in time. When the nausea passed, I sat on the cold tile floor, trying to reconcile the man I thought I knew with this incredible deception. Adam had always been so present, so engaged in our life together. How had he managed to create and maintain an entire separate family? How had I never suspected anything? That night, after putting Emily to bed, I continued my investigation. Adam's cell phone records showed regular calls to a number I didn't recognize, Vanessa's, presumably. His credit card statements revealed purchases in Riverside on days he was supposedly at work. There were even charges from restaurants in our own town on evenings he had told me he was working late, suggesting he had taken Vanessa and her children, his children, to dinner just miles from our home. I found another email account, one I'd never known about, which contained years of correspondence not just with Vanessa but with schools, doctors, and activity coordinators for Ava and Jake. Adam had been fully involved in their lives, attending parent-teacher conferences, soccer games, and dance recitals, all while maintaining his role in our family without a hint of his double life. The next morning, I called my mother and asked her to watch Emily for the day. I needed to see for myself. The address was easy to find from the emails, a modest 2-story house in a family-friendly neighborhood in Riverside. I parked across the street, not sure what I was hoping to accomplish. Part of me wanted to storm up to the door and confront this woman, to scream and demand answers that Adam could no longer provide. But another part of me was terrified of what I might learn, of having to face the reality of Adam's betrayal in the form of the children he had with another woman. As I sat there, paralyzed by indecision, the front door opened. Vanessa emerged with a young boy, Jake, I presumed, followed by a girl who looked to be on the cusp of adolescence. They got into a minivan and drove away, likely headed to school. Vanessa looked tired, her movements sluggish, her expression drawn. She was grieving too, I realized with a jolt. She had also lost her partner, the father of her children, without warning. I drove home without making contact, my mind racing with questions. Did Vanessa know about me? Had Adam told her he was divorced, widowed, or simply single with a demanding job that kept him away? Or was she fully aware of his deception and complicit in it? I had no way of knowing without speaking to her, something I wasn't ready to do. For a week, I told no one what I had discovered. I continued going through Adam's things, finding more evidence of his dual life, a second cell phone hidden in his golf bag, a small album of family photos with Vanessa and the children tucked inside a locked drawer in his home office, even a safe deposit box key that led me to documents including a mortgage for the Riverside house and education funds for Ava and Jake. The most baffling discovery was that neither the house nor any of the accounts were in Adam's name. Everything was in Vanessa's name only, with Adam listed as an authorized user or emergency contact. Similarly, our home and most of our assets were in my name or joint accounts. It was as if he had carefully constructed his double life to keep each family's finances separate, reducing the risk of either of us discovering the other. Eventually, I knew I had to confide in someone. I called my closest friend, Rachel, who came over immediately after I sent her a cryptic text saying I needed her. When I showed her what I had found, she was as shocked as I had been. "This is like something from a movie," she said, scrolling through the emails. "How did he manage this for so long? Didn't his parents ever meet Vanessa or the kids?" That question had been nagging at me too. Robert and Susan had always been involved grandparents to Emily, visiting often and taking her for weekends. Had they known about Ava and Jake as well? Had they been part of the deception? I couldn't imagine it. They had always seemed so genuine in their love for us, but then again, I had thought the same about Adam. Rachel urged me to speak with a lawyer before making any contact with Vanessa. "You need to protect yourself and Emily," she insisted. "Who knows what kind of legal claims she might make against Adam's estate?" I knew she was right, but the thought of treating this as a legal matter rather than the personal devastation it was felt wrong somehow. Still, I made an appointment with a family law attorney for the following week. Before I could keep that appointment, the decision was taken out of my hands. I was in the kitchen making dinner when the doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I immediately recognized as Vanessa, standing on my porch with a determined expression. Taking a deep breath, I opened the door. "Are you Hannah?" she asked, her voice steady despite the visible tension in her posture. When I nodded, she continued, "I'm Vanessa Mitchell. I think we need to talk." I invited her in, acutely aware of Emily playing in the living room just steps away. Vanessa glanced at her, a complicated expression crossing her face, before following me to the kitchen. We sat at the table where, just days earlier, I had discovered her existence. "How did you find me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "The same way you found me, I imagine," she replied. "I went through Adam's things after the funeral and found emails, photos, documents. Evidence of you and Emily?" She paused, studying my face. "You didn't know about me, did you? Until after he died." I shook my head, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. "I didn't know about you either," she said quietly. "Not until 2 weeks ago. I thought we were a family. Adam told me he traveled so much for work because he was the regional manager, responsible for several states. He was gone 3 or 4 days a week, sometimes more, but I never questioned it because when he was home, he was completely present." She gave a bitter laugh. "Now I understand why his schedule was so consistent. He had it all worked out perfectly, didn't he? A few days here, a few days there, business trips that were actually time with his other family." Hearing her describe a situation so similar to mine, Adam's attentiveness when present, the consistent travel schedule, the absolute normality of our life together, made me feel both less alone in my shock and more devastated by the extent of his deception. I came here today because we need to discuss practical matters, Vanessa continued, her tone shifting to something more businesslike. The house I live in with Ava and Jake, Adam paid for it, but it's in my name. The same with our car and the children's education funds. He set everything up that way from the beginning, which I thought was his way of showing commitment since we weren't legally married. Now I understand it was to keep his two lives separate. I tensed at her words. You weren't legally married? No, she admitted. We had a commitment ceremony 10 years ago, with friends and family present, but Adam always had excuses for why we couldn't make it official. Work complications, tax issues, waiting for the right time. I believed him. She shook her head, clearly angry with herself. I've since learned that you and Adam were legally married 6 years ago. The timeline struck me. But you have an 11-year-old daughter. Yes, Vanessa confirmed. Adam and I met 13 years ago. Ava was born 2 years later. We had our ceremony the following year, and Jake came along 3 years after that. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Adam had been with Vanessa for 5 years before he even met me. He had a child with her before our first date. Our entire relationship, every moment, every milestone, had existed alongside his life with her. Nothing had been real. I've consulted with an attorney, Vanessa continued, oblivious to my internal turmoil. Adam may not have legally married me, but we lived as a family for over a decade. In this state, that establishes me as his common-law wife, with rights to a portion of his estate and assets. Her words snapped me back to the present. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that Adam's life insurance, retirement accounts, investments, anything in his name, should be divided between his families. Both of his families, Hannah. I felt a surge of anger, the first strong emotion beyond shock and grief I'd experienced since discovering Adam's betrayal. He listed me as the beneficiary on his policies and accounts. We were legally married. Emily is his legal child. And Ava and Jake are his biological children who depended on him financially their entire lives, Vanessa countered, her voice rising slightly. They'd just lost their father. Should they suffer financially because of his deception? Should they be denied their inheritance because he chose not to legally marry me? Before I could respond, Emily wandered into the kitchen, curious about the unfamiliar voice. She stopped when she saw Vanessa, suddenly shy. Who are you? She asked, edging closer to me. Vanessa's expression softened as she looked at my daughter. My name is Vanessa. I knew your daddy. Emily's face lit up at the mention of Adam. You knew my daddy? Did you work with him? The innocent question hung in the air between us, laden with implications neither of us was prepared to address. I quickly intervened, sending Emily to continue playing with promises of a snack later. Once she was out of earshot, I turned back to Vanessa. I can't discuss this now, not with Emily here. I have an appointment with a lawyer next week. We can talk after that. Vanessa nodded reluctantly. That's fair. But there's something else we need to discuss. She hesitated, seeming to choose her words carefully. Emily should know about Ava and Jake. They're her siblings. They share the same father. I believe they should have a relationship. The suggestion sent a wave of panic through me. The thought of Emily learning about Adam's other family, of having to explain his betrayal to her when she was still processing his death, was overwhelming. She's 4 years old, I said firmly. She just lost her father. This isn't the time to complicate her understanding of family. Ava and Jake lost their father too, Vanessa reminded me. And they're old enough to understand what Adam did. They're confused, hurt, and curious about their half-sister. I'm not suggesting we tell Emily everything right away, but I don't think keeping the children apart is the right answer either. That's not your decision to make, I said, standing up to signal the end of our conversation. I'm Emily's mother and legal guardian. I'll decide what's best for her. Vanessa rose as well, gathering her purse. I understand this is a lot to process. I'm still processing it myself. But I want you to know that I'm prepared to go to court if necessary, both for a fair division of assets, and for the children's right to know each other. I hope it doesn't come to that. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, trying to make sense of this new complication. The idea of sharing Adam's life insurance and retirement, money I had been counting on to provide security for Emily and myself now that he was gone, was distressing enough. But the thought of being legally compelled to introduce Emily to her half-siblings, to integrate Adam's secret family into our lives, filled me with dread. It wasn't that I begrudged Ava and Jake a relationship with their half-sister, but rather that I wasn't ready to dismantle Emily's understanding of her family, especially while she was still grieving her father. The meeting with my lawyer the following week did little to alleviate my concerns. While he assured me that as the legal spouse, I had stronger claims to Adam's assets than Vanessa, he also warned that her common law argument had merit, particularly given the duration of their relationship and Adam's financial support of their children. The court generally aims for equitable distribution in these cases, he explained. While you may be entitled to more as the legal spouse, Vanessa and her children will likely receive a portion of the estate, especially assets that were in Adam's name alone. When I raised the issue of Vanessa wanting Emily to meet Ava and Jake, my lawyer was more hesitant. Family courts typically favor relationships between siblings, even half-siblings, he said. If Vanessa pursues this legally, the court might order some form of visitation or contact, especially as Emily gets older. However, given Emily's young age and the recent trauma of losing her father, you have a strong argument for delaying any introduction until she's more emotionally prepared. I left the office feeling marginally better but still uncertain about the path forward. I needed to talk to someone who knew Adam as well as I had, or thought I had. I drove to his parents' house, still unsure whether they had known about Vanessa and the children all along. Robert and Susan welcomed me with warm hugs, asking after Emily and checking how I was coping. As we settled in their living room with cups of tea, I took a deep breath and asked directly, "Did you know about Adam's other family?" The confusion on their faces seemed genuine. "Other family?" Susan repeated. "What do you mean?" I explained what I had discovered: Adam's 11-year relationship with Vanessa, their 2 children, the house in Riverside. As I spoke, Susan's hand flew to her mouth in shock, while Robert's face flushed with a mix of disbelief and anger. "That's not possible," Robert insisted. "We would have known. Adam wouldn't have hidden something like that from us for over a decade." "I have proof," I said quietly, pulling out my phone to show them photos I had saved from Vanessa's social media, pictures of Adam with Ava and Jake, family gatherings, holidays celebrated in a home I'd never seen. Susan began to cry, while Robert stared at the images in stunned silence. "Those are his children," Susan whispered, her finger hovering over the screen. "They look just like him, just like he did at those ages." "I don't understand," Robert said, his voice rough with emotion. "How could he have done this? To you, to us, to those children? What kind of man leads a double life like this?" I had been asking myself the same questions for weeks without finding answers. "I was hoping you might have some insight," I admitted. "Did he ever mention Riverside? Were there signs I missed?" They both shook their heads, clearly as blindsided as I had been. Robert mentioned that Adam had occasionally referenced clients or colleagues in Riverside, but nothing that would have suggested a permanent connection to the town. Susan recalled Adam sometimes being unavailable for family events due to work, but it had never seemed suspicious given his role. "What happens now?" Susan asked tearfully. "Do these children, our grandchildren we never knew existed, do they know about us?" I explained my conversation with Vanessa, including her claims on Adam's estate and her desire for the children to meet. Robert and Susan exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "We would like to meet them," Susan said finally. "Ava and Jake are Adam's children, which makes them our grandchildren, just like Emily. They've lost their father. They shouldn't lose their connection to his family too." I hadn't expected this reaction. "You want to have a relationship with them? With Vanessa?" Robert nodded slowly. "It's not Ava and Jake's fault that Adam lived a lie. They're innocent in all this, just like Emily. And yes, we want to know them." Their response left me feeling isolated. I had expected outrage on my behalf, condemnation of Vanessa, perhaps even denial of the children's place in the family. Instead, they seemed ready to embrace Adam's secret family without hesitation. "I need time," I said, standing to leave. "I'm not ready to introduce Emily to them, and I'm certainly not prepared to share holidays or family gatherings with Vanessa." Susan reached for my hand. "Hannah, we understand this is incredibly difficult for you. Adam betrayed you in the worst way possible. But please don't let that prevent Emily from knowing her siblings or us from knowing all of our grandchildren." When I didn't respond, Robert added, "We're going to reach out to Vanessa. We want to meet Ava and Jake. We hope you'll understand." I left their house feeling even more adrift than before. The people I had counted on to support me through this nightmare were now aligning themselves with Vanessa, prioritizing relationships with children they'd never met over respecting my need for space and time. Over the next few weeks, things escalated. Vanessa filed a legal claim against Adam's estate, seeking half of his assets and requesting court-ordered visitation between Emily and her half-siblings. Robert and Susan met Ava and Jake and began spending time with them regularly, sending me photos and videos without my consent, urging me to reconsider my position. "They're wonderful children," Susan gushed during one phone call. "Ava is so mature for her age, and Jake has Adam's sense of humor. Emily would love them." "That's not the point," I tried to explain. "Emily is still asking when Daddy is coming home. She doesn't understand death, let alone the concept that her father had another family he kept secret from us. I'm trying to protect her. Are you protecting Emily, or are you punishing Ava and Jake for what Adam did? Robert challenged. They're hurting too, Hannah. They want to know their little sister. The accusation stung, especially coming from someone who had always supported me. I'm not punishing anyone, I insisted. I'm making decisions based on what's best for my child right now. When Emily is older, when she's processed Adam's death, then we can consider introducing her to Ava and Jake. The conversation ended with tension on both sides, a new and painful dynamic in a relationship that had previously been one of mutual respect and affection. The final blow came when I received an email from Susan, informing me that they had invited Vanessa, Ava, and Jake to Emily's upcoming birthday party, an event traditionally held at their house each year. We want to celebrate all of our grandchildren together, Susan wrote. The children deserve to know each other, and a birthday party is the perfect opportunity for a first meeting. It will be a positive environment with family present to support everyone. I was furious that they would make such a decision without consulting me, especially for an event meant to celebrate Emily. I replied immediately, making it clear that if Vanessa and her children attended, Emily and I would not. I explained again my concerns about introducing this complication during such a vulnerable time in Emily's life. Their response was unexpected and devastating. They suggested that if I was unwilling to allow Emily to meet her siblings at the party, perhaps the celebration should be cancelled altogether. Furthermore, they expressed their intention to maintain relationships with Ava and Jake regardless of my feelings on the matter. We've lost our son, Robert wrote. We refuse to lose our connection to his children as well, all of his children. If you can't understand that, perhaps we need to reevaluate our relationship moving forward. The implied threat was clear. If I continue to resist their push for one big happy family, I risked losing their support and presence in Emily's life as well. It was emotional blackmail, made all the more painful by coming from people I had loved and trusted for years. As I sit here now, 3 months after Adam's death, I find myself facing impossible choices. Do I acquiesce to Vanessa's demands and my in-law's pressure, allowing Emily to meet siblings she doesn't know she has before she's emotionally ready? Do I fight a legal battle that could deplete the very assets Vanessa is trying to claim, leaving less for all of our children in the end? Do I risk alienating Robert and Susan, depriving Emily of grandparents who adore her, simply to maintain boundaries I believe are necessary for her well-being? The anger I feel toward Adam grows daily. His selfishness, his deception, his absolute disregard for the consequences of his actions have left all of us, me, Vanessa, our children, his parents, struggling to piece together new realities from the wreckage he left behind. He took the coward's way out, not by dying, which was beyond his control, but by living a lie that ensured he would never have to face the mess he created. In my darkest moments, I wonder if there were signs I should have seen. Was I willfully blind to Adam's deception because the truth would have been too painful to acknowledge? Did I ignore red flags because I was too invested in the life we had built? Or was he simply that good at compartmentalizing, at maintaining the fiction of two separate, complete lives without ever letting them intersect? I don't have answers to these questions, and I likely never will. What I do know is that I need to make decisions now based not on anger or hurt but on what will be best for Emily in the long term. Perhaps that means gradually introducing her to her half-siblings, finding a way to explain Adam's choices in terms she can understand as she grows older. Perhaps it means coming to a financial settlement with Vanessa that acknowledges her children's right to their father's support without depleting the resources Emily will need. Whatever path I choose, I know it won't be easy. The road ahead is fraught with legal battles, emotional confrontations, and difficult conversations. But I am determined to navigate it with as much grace and wisdom as I can muster, not for Adam's sake. He forfeited any claim to my consideration the moment he chose to live a double life, but for Emily's. She deserves a future not defined by her father's betrayal but by the love and stability I am committed to providing for her, regardless of the challenges we face. In the end, that may mean finding a way to incorporate Ava and Jake into our lives, to forge a new kind of family from the broken pieces Adam left behind. It won't be the family I thought I had, the life I believed we were building together. But perhaps, in time, it can be something honest and real, something built on truth rather than deception, on choices made with open eyes and full hearts, rather than on the elaborate fiction Adam constructed to serve his own selfish desires. That, at least, is my hope as I face the uncertain future he left us all to navigate without him.